And welcome to this week's episode of the Dr. Tech Show, and where Pauline, Roche, myself, and Sweyn Hunter, and occasional guests guide you through the world of online communications in a show where we talk tech, a show which was the brainchild of the late great internet evangelist John Popham. So, the first thing we do is check out the weather. And how's the weather where you are? Sweyn, how's the weather where you are?
It's been uniformly dreadful all weekend, and I look out the window now, though, and I see a patch of blue sky, so who knows, there might be hope for better weather coming.
And where are you, Sweyn?
Oh, of course, still in Orkney. I've not moved anywhere since last week. I don't think I've moved more than 2 miles since last week.
And our special guest is Jennifer Jones. Jen, how's the weather where you are? And where are you?
I am in Stranraer in the deepest, darkest southwest Scotland, and the weather is grey and wet. But it was lovely during the weekend, sunny, cold. But it's a bit milder today, so not as slippy on the roads.
Mm-hmm. Good. And in Birmingham, out the window, I can see clouds, but I can also see some brightness. So it's going to be one of those days where it's not snowing, but it's definitely going to be cold out, and I'll be glad to be indoors most of the day. So we start with our usual kind of reference to what's happening around this time of the year, and because of the kind of show we are, we're picking up events that are happening that are relevant to our listeners and readers. And throughout the UK since lockdown, initiatives like Digital Access West Yorkshire have sprung up to meet the needs of people who have neither access to technology or Wi-Fi. And on this week, on the 14th of January, Thursday, they're having a meetup online, of course, and they've got an Eventbrite link, which we can tweet out later. And their mission, with the support of Solidaritech, CIC, was to act fast, act local, and get technology sitting idle to those who needed it quickly, both adults and families with children. So a small group of volunteers came together and used their different skills to put an agile process in place and take in donations to repurpose and safely distributed via referral partners. And over the last 2 months, they've now repurposed over 200 so-called pre-loved devices, now in the hands of their next owners and connecting more people. And since January's latest lockdown, they've been asked by people all over the country to share their learning and for local initiatives to make a difference where they are. They also know there's a wealth of peers doing exactly this, and they want to share lessons learned and collaborate further. Okay, so Sweyn has got the link up on the screen to Digital Access West Yorkshire, what they've been doing, and about this meeting that looks like it's going to be really useful. So yeah, the meeting's on the 14th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. in the evening, and they want to catalyze a peer-to-peer network of DIY local and national approaches, so people can learn from each other, create a map of what, who, and how, and amplify each other's initiatives. So that's definitely something we want to support and be part of, and I've signed up for it already. Sweyn, I don't know if you're planning to be there.
Yes, I've signed up. I'll be there.
Yeah, great. Because I think we can both learn and share lots of information that we've been picking up over the last months of this show. So yeah, we're looking forward to that, and we'd encourage other people to attend that. And secondly, not this week, next week, about the 21st. Next week is UK GovCamp 2021 online. It's from the 21st to the 23rd, and this is an event, an conference event, mostly for local government people, but they do welcome people from other sectors as well. Although I think that probably the sign up is passed by now, but it's an event where people working in those sectors aim to use technology better and help each other to find new things to do, new ideas, and especially with lockdown and kind of all the difficulties of COVID pandemic, the public sector has been inundated and kind of overwhelmed in some places with work they have to do. So this is a good time for those in those places to get together and talk about what needs to be happening in the community and what they've learned and what they can share with each other. So we're looking forward to both of those.
For those that are registered, if anyone's watching, today is the last day to pitch a session, because it's an unconference format. So, of course, all the participants pitch the sessions that will eventually be held. And due to the online nature of the event this year, if you're already registered, today is the last day to pitch a session. So
should be good. Looking forward to that. But Sweyn and I are both volunteering. Well, registered to volunteer with that, so we'll see how that goes. Okay, and we come now to our special guest, who's Jennifer Jones. Jennifer, we're delighted to have you. Do you prefer Jen? I think you do. You prefer Jen?
Jen's fine. Jennifer's my Sunday name. Jen is fine.
Okay, we'll say Jen then. We're delighted to have you with us today. You're a reporter at the Stranraer and Wigtonshire Free Press, and amongst writing about issues important to the southwest of Scotland, you also occasionally write about journalism, digital culture, and social media. Jen founded Hackers Scotland, running workshops and seminars about the Scottish media landscape, misinformation and trust in the digital age, and is part of the Women in Journalism Scotland Committee. So Jen, you're very welcome to the show. We're particularly glad to have you because you and John Popham, who founded this show, were good pals and did some work together, and we'd love to hear about that. But let's start with how you got started in all this online business and your early days, shall we say.
Yeah. Okay. So I came into journalism late. So I retrained 2 years ago as a reporter. So I'm a cub reporter at 36. So I had my academic career first. Doesn't say I'm not coming back to it, but I came into digital inclusion because I was down in Leicester, and that's where I met John. That was in 2007-8 when Twitter was in its infancy. So I've been on Twitter for like 13 years this January. And I was doing a master's in new media, and it was around the time that social media was starting to make a kind of, it was starting to become more prevalent, and there was more people online looking to find ways to, hack journalism or have a voice online or citizen journalism, whatever you want to call it. And I was kind of part of that wave in the Midlands and in London, and using technology to consider what the citizen would be in terms of journalism. So I'd got into this because I'd started a PhD at Leicester Uni, and then I'd been working part-time in the press office, and I became kind of interested in organisations that were taking the press releases, but they weren't newspapers, and they were turning the sort of press releases into something that was related to community, but then they were also connecting with the local press, like Leicester Mercury. And I was working with them because they were more receptive to the stories we were putting out, because there was a challenge of newspapers only really publishing press releases and not really adding to them. So there was that blend of media where digital was transforming how journalism was working. It was opening up doors in terms of who was able to be a journalist, and then websites were becoming more sophisticated, but you didn't need the technological skills to run them, so WordPress, Blogger and stuff like that. So initially I was interested in that as my research, and I ended up doing this PhD that looked at citizen journalism at the Olympics. So I went to Vancouver, and then obviously London had the Olympics, and then I moved back to Glasgow, and Glasgow had the Commonwealth Games. That's important because when I moved back to Glasgow, it was in 2012, just before the London Games, we were doing like projects that looked at citizen journalism at the Games, but it was under the guise of digital inclusion. So how do you use these tools to engage citizens in a major event? That is one of the biggest mediated events in the world, because the audience reaches global capacity and everybody's watching at the same time. So in a digital world that's fragmented and everybody's doing their own thing, what events out there still bring us together globally? And sport is one of them. So the Olympics, football, etc., these things that we watch in real time, while everything else has sort of been fragmented and we watch it in our own time. So these sort of projects were funded by streams related to the Commonwealth Games and the Olympics, and the kind of research organisations around universities were sort of big in engaging in that. But John and I had met at the very start of this. So when I was at Leicester, John was at events, we were crossing paths all the time. I was kind of working all over England, and we'd be bumping into events. And John was the same, we'd spend a lot of time on trains, really, and we were kind of remote workers. And I remember he invited me up to Huddersfield in 2011, and I was speaking at the university anyway. and we met up and stuff. And then when I moved back to Glasgow, John was doing the My Digital Place, My Digital Planet, project, and he needed somebody to help him in the box, the internet box.
Please tell us more about that project.
So it was Nominate Trust funded it, and it was kind of connected to the social media surgeries idea. So they placed like big container boxes in various parts of the UK, and then what they could do is walk into it and get advice on technology and inclusion. And what was really kind of innovative at the time was people were coming in and saying that they can't get tech advice unless they go into like PC World or O2 or Vodafone and they get sold advice. So it was quite a kind of neutral space, so you could get advice that was not connected to having to buy something.
And these were just people, citizens walking in off the street.
Aye, and it was interesting to me because John needed somebody to help him with it, and I was in Glasgow, and we spent like 2 weeks together. And actually, to be honest, it was quite an emotional time for both of us because people were coming in off the street, and it was in winter as well, so it was November. So people were coming in off the street looking for warmth and comfort and an ear. There was one guy who came in, and he would come in every day, and he would sit and talk to us, and he would use the computer. But actually, he was telling John that he wanted to tell his story on Jeremy Kyle because he wanted to be listened to, and John was like, no.
Are you sure?
Exactly. But this is really interesting, right? Because people would just assume that how does somebody end up in Jeremy Kyle? Well, they want to be heard, right?
Yeah,
they want to be heard. And John was saying to him, look, listen, I can film your story now. Let's film your story. And he got his phone out and he recorded the guy's story. And the guy had said to him, he'd seen his brother get murdered when he was 12. Horrific. I mean, this is 8 years ago, right? So the conversations we have around trauma now and addiction have moved on so much compared to then. But this guy here, so this guy here was just like telling a story. Sorry, what were you saying there? It was just from that period. But he said the happiest time in his life was when he was at college in 1995, and he drew a shield that was like about Oasis and Blur. And that is like in a way sweet, but also so tragic that the happiest time this boy's had is when he was at college and he got to draw something as a young adult. There was also another thing as well. It was like a guy who was like 32 had come in and he'd never been online and he didn't need to go online, but John was helping him. So for me, like working with John, I think that had a kind of formative effect on the digital inclusion work I ended up doing, because you can get lots of funding to go in and teach people how to use iPads and all that sort of stuff. But actually, are you listening to what they're saying? Like, we make assumptions that a 32-year-old would know how to work a phone or work a laptop. But he had so much things going on in his life that they didn't have that period of time. So the box was this sort of place where you'd have you'd have a woman come in and ask how to fix her phone, or you'd have a guy in his 80s come in and he showed his iPad, he wanted to play Angry Birds, and that's all very sweet and nice. But I think in the city centre of Glasgow, what's the catch here? Why am I here? Like, you can just come in and have a cup of tea and then talk about technology. They're like, what do you want from me? Nothing. And John and I sat in that box.
You're reminding me of one of my favourite arguments in favour of public libraries, actually, because in a sense public libraries perform that where they exist, perform that sort of function, or used to anyway. And just hearing you say all that stuff about just accepting people as they are and just being a space for them to be in, and then their story comes out, I think it's something that we need to not lose sight of.
There's stories, and then there's just like, if we're talking about literacies, so I guess what's happened since then is that libraries have become financial advisors, and librarians have had to learn how to teach people how to fill out universal credit forms. And as somebody that had to be in universal credit a few years ago, and I've got a PhD, they're bloody minefield, right? So like having to then teach somebody, and then also what is the motivation to get somebody online when the only motivation, the only exposure to it is either abuse online or getting rejected by universal credit because you can't fill out your form. So there's just that you don't even get past that first hurdle of what the real benefits of it. So John and I worked together in that, and then I was at UWS, the University of Western Scotland, finished my PhD, and I got a job full time on the Digital Commonwealth project, and John was pretty much a partner in that. So one of his big things, which I feel very strongly myself as being a freelancer, is that folk would want John to come to things, but then they wouldn't pay him properly, or they wouldn't have any money for him. And when we did Digital Commonwealth, me and my colleague, Professor David McGilvray, we were very keen to get John on board and budgeted him into the funding so he could be part of that. So we weren't bringing him up to Scotland just so we could say we've got somebody that's good at this, but we wanted to have him throughout the project. And he was certainly, I mean, I know in Edinburgh we did workshops, and Martin Macaulay, who worked for the council at the time, he said that John was just the person that everybody really took to, and his approach to things. So he had this way with people where he would listen to people and they felt heard. And going back to my wee man in the box who wanted to go on Jeremy Kyle, he recorded the story and showed him, but he also explained to him the consequences of going on television. And I think we'll never know what happened to that guy, but I think both of us at the end of the day, we both went to the pub and we were like, I actually feel like a counsellor or a therapist rather than a technologist. I feel like it's more than that. You need to have the ability to listen to stories, but also protect yourself, because I felt like it was just raw. It was the first time it was raw stories, and you can put a camera between people and that protects you. But if you're actually listening to people, you maybe don't want to put them on the internet. You've got a responsibility as well as a storyteller to say, no, I'm not going to put you online, but I will listen to you. You know, so that was a big thing as well, you know?
Yeah. I think a lot of the stories we've tried to cover on here have been about, as we said earlier before the show started, not about the technology itself, but about what you get to, on the other side. It's a means to an end. And maybe, as you say, sometimes people don't need the technology, they just need to have the thing happen. And technology has been the way that this public sector a lot of the time has had to create access to things. Maybe that's not always right. We have also said that what we've learned in the months of doing this program is that if an organization is developing a digital way of doing things, they need to develop a non-digital way as well, because otherwise it excludes people.
Yeah, I think there's a flattening, right? So there's a flattening when we look at something on the screen. And I don't think social media helps in a way, because I've went full circle with this. I used to be the biggest tech evangelist ever. I'm probably more of a skeptic now. I'm still up for getting people online and everything, but I think we need to be realistic here, especially with the pandemic. Everything's moved online, everything's flattened, nuance is gone, illiteracy, the flair of being able to understand jokes. I can crack jokes, but they might get me cancelled, but the context is gone. So the flattening of things, and also the reward system around social media. So you are rewarded by sharing trauma. So you get likes and clicks and retweets, the more outrageous your emotion is. Yeah. So that in itself is literacy building as well, because it's easy for me to go online and tell everybody everything and bare my soul, but it's probably a lot harder to speak to individually about what's been going on in your life, to contact somebody, pick up the phone and do it. The fact that we become more comfortable acting like a micro celebrity is worrying in terms of literacy building as well, because people get validated by the engagement on social media. So that is another issue as well. You get people online, okay, but what do you do after that? And I always say in my journalist role, when people phone us up and go, I'd like to tell my story in the paper, I say, will this make your life better or worse, me writing your story? And the problem is that for social media, we don't have that journalist in the middle going, is this going to be good or bad? You have people just putting online. And I think that's where we're at now.
That's critical. I like that analysis, and I think that's something we can echo. Yeah, very much. Yeah. That's the kind of session I'd like to see somebody running on a UK GovCamp, ethics. It doesn't get talked about enough, really. And I see lots of people coming off social media now, they're coming off Twitter, they're coming off Facebook.
But I don't want to talk about Trump, but this is that's the breaking point here as we start talking about.
I was editing myself. So I'm glad you brought that up.
There's a breaking point here, right? And our social media platforms doing enough, but then also at some point, are we doing enough as people that have been on this for a long time? I've been on this for a long time, and I've been working in this space for a long time. Am I doing enough to influence or change that. I don't know. The reason why I'm in journalism now is because I think I think the skills of a journalist is useful here, because if more people think like that, is this going to make my life better? What is the impact of this? What are the ethics? What's the legality around this? Then actually that's how you think about publishing. And when people talk about the media, you are the media, unfortunately. It's like the mainstream media is you. Social media is the mainstream now. So I think there's all that as well. Like Trump had more power on Twitter than any of the press. So that's the thing we need to talk about now, I think.
I think the thing that struck me most about the recent violence and insurrection in the Congress was that somebody had noticed that virtually everyone who was actually inside was busy creating content for their social media.
With their sticks. We have to get quite quickly away from this idea that citizen journalism is essentially an act of good. It can be, but you won't get the same level of numbers. It's okay to think like a journalist, but you know, if people are, you see them, they've all had their gimbals and they're all kind of filming it and they're all getting high off the engagement.
I was just struck by you saying that they clearly don't have the editor in their ear saying, what is this going to do to your life?
Yeah.
Then the next time you see them, it's being chucked off flights or being in their orange jumpsuits being arrested and charged with
losing job. There's nobody there going, look, is this helpful? And I think that's where the craft of journalism can come in. But you know, it's difficult on social media because that doesn't rise to the top. What rises to the top is the most outrageous. If it's the most emotional, if it's the most, if you get famous, internet famous, or go viral, or the algorithm picks you up because your story empowers people or engages people, then you're going to be chasing that high for the next one. So it starts becoming deeply personal. So when we're going back to kind of digital inclusion stuff, this is why I've came full circle, because the last kind of stuff I was doing before I moved into journalism, I couldn't hand on heart tell people, and it reminds me of John in that box, I couldn't hand on heart encourage people to put their story online because I'd be responsible for them in a way. And I don't think I've done so many projects involving this stuff, and like in 2013 I was involved in a community newspaper going online, and one woman was really into it and really wanted to be a journalist, and then somebody in her block grassed her in because she was on sickness benefits, and they grassed her in because she was well enough on a Wednesday to take part in the workshops. And you know what, that is preempting where we are now, because if you look at how folk are looking at folks' social media to see if they've broken the rules of COVID, you know, we are the panopticon. We don't need people are like scared to do stuff, or they're doing it on purpose. So we are volunteering this stuff. So again, back to literacies and everything. Are we aware enough about what the trail we're leaving behind? I mean, that example you said there was perfect about they do something like storm the White House, and then there's consequences. You know, it's not, and then they say it's free speech. That isn't free speech.
You've had your free speech.
It's breaking the law.
Yeah,
you've had your free speech, and now here come the consequences. Yes, exactly. No, and it is something. I think part of that. It reminds me, as well as the age-old debate about broadcasting rather than engaging, or engaging rather than broadcasting. If what you're trying to do is simply put your story out there for everyone to see, then there are not so obvious, there are risks with that. And I think what's happened over the last few years is more of an emphasis on engagement between people with like minds or with common interests, again, for better or worse. But I think it's clear, people like Dan Slee have written about the retreat of people into private groups or WhatsApp groups or whatever, out of the initial idealistic, let's tell everybody about myself type role. And I wonder how you see that kind of maybe taking the sharp edges off or not.
No, I think that's a good point. So like context and nuance, I think the individual has to be somewhat responsible for that as well. I think you're going to get extremes. We'll park the extremes at the moment, but I think generally you've got things like, you know, fitness groups, mental health groups, things with a bit of structure, people that are maybe my friends just set up a business in coaching, and she's got a group that on Facebook which has got nearly 600 people in it now. I'm volunteering to do a session with her. I'm more comfortable talking in that session within a private group, 600 people, because I know what the audience is like. But that just reminds me of the internet 20 years ago when I had a live journal and you could control who was reading your intimate thoughts. Embarrassing. But that I used to be involved in forums, I used to be involved in blogs that you can control, and then everything opened up and there was this utopian idea that we'd all connect, and now we're all connected and realise that actually, can the human psyche handle that amount of exposure? I'm not sure, especially if we're not getting the critical like a critical pal turn around going, Jen, see that thing you put online? You probably shouldn't have done that. What are you talking about? Freedom of speech. We're in this sort of learning mode around, and I actually, you have to take each context individually. But using my friend's mindset group, for instance, that I think that works. I'm involved in a fitness community on Facebook, and I feel like everybody's got the same value system there, and we all subscribe to it, and we pay our $9.99 a month, and that works really well. But you have to find your tribe like that, and I think that isn't a new thing with the internet. I mean, I think it was Howard Rheingold and that was writing about that sort of stuff 30 years ago. I think social media still wants to get you back to that outrage. It still wants you to tweet the most outrageous things, because that's what their business model is.
And that combined with the naive view of everything that is new, you assume that everyone who's doing that is your tribe. But as more and more people get involved, you find that there's just the same kind of microcosm of humanity in all, in the users of all technology, really.
Well, I don't want to get into the whole polarization debate, but you limit what you see on certain platforms. If you get too down into a tribe, then if you say something that's jarring to that tribe, then you will be pushed out of the tribe. So there's always that fear. So people do limit themselves, especially in a public platform. However, if you spend, especially during lockdown, if you spend like 4 or 5 hours doom scrolling, as they call it, looking at negative stuff, eventually you're going to react to that. And if you react to it, then that puts you in a position where you'll get critical feedback. So that's when it starts getting into the territory that's dangerous. But I think if you can find little groups, especially like I find with, like, before I came in this call, I was in a call with the community hall committee about a story. Now that's a real life physical group that using technology to connect during this time, and I wonder they'll carry that on post lockdown. But that's a great example of a physical situation that's using technology to enable it, rather than more random stuff where you find yourself like just randomly connecting with people. It's a bit chaotic at times, and I think that you have to recognize when that's not. I'd say it's like it could go either way, that stuff. So it's recognizing, but that's the point when the individual has to be like, right, is this helping me? Or is this making me feel worse?
This is really interesting for me, who due to geographical factors, I tend to be the one who wants to take part electronically from a distance and without having to fly hundreds of miles. But actually, I have found over the past few months that the sheer volume of opportunity for doing that is just completely bewildering. And I'm probably actually doing, at this point, less than in normal times, even though I know that in every hour of the day and night, I could connect to somewhere that would be interesting and useful and intriguing and even exciting in some cases. So I like you, I wonder how, once the restrictions come to back off a bit, what will stick and what will kind of go back, or indeed move on to some other type of
face to face is like prime real estate, actually. And there was stories before COVID around tech bosses not letting their kids be on iPads and social media and stuff like that. And like, I fondly love print because I love being able to hold the book without fucking notifications coming in. So excuse my swearing, but that's how I feel, right? When I'm trying to read and something, and then the next thing I'm back on my email or something. So I think I think Zoom fatigue. I think we'll want to see each other face to face. We'll want to spend more quality time. I had to spend Christmas on my own this year. I didn't even want to go online. I don't want to go on a Zoom quiz, anything like that. But that'll make me appreciate Christmas next year. This year, sorry, when we are. So I wonder collectively we might have, you know that way when you've had too much junk food or you've been to the cinema and ate too many sweeties. That's what I feel about technology at the moment. Like I love it, but it's also like I've had enough.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't want to use. I try and not be online at the weekend. I try and split things up a bit, but I wonder if we'll reach a collective fatigue where we will actually appreciate face-to-face meetings and like occasionally come for a conference, because I think it's open. I agree with you. It's opened up. I've been to so many events that I wouldn't have otherwise been. I've got to be part of the Women in Journalism Committee, which tends to centre around Glasgow, whereas I'm in Stranraer, I'm a Women in Journalism. I can be part of that, and it's genuinely more representative. But I think again, I still want to go to the pub and talk about things without it being on a screen, because I think it impacts what you say, and then everything's been recorded and mediated, and there's just nothing that human interaction you get from real life.
I want to sit in a pub and kind of observe people's body language and look at them in their face and buy them a pint and just have the crack without, is this an important thing to say, or I'm making best use of the time. I just want to kick back and just chill out. So Jennifer, if you were back in the box with John and the people coming in, what kind of advice would you be giving them about getting online, using digital? What questions would you be asking them?
That's a good question. So you want it from 2012 position, or you want it from 2021?
From now, what you would do?
To be honest, I think the practice is exactly the same. Like I've always felt that rather than teaching people how to work a tool in a kind of uniformed way, like I felt that digital inclusion workshops, especially, I worked in university for like 12 years before I did this. So workshops where you sit people down with technology and go, click this, click this, click this. It's just not engaging at all. You have to find out where people are online at that point and how you can just get them a wee bit further into something else. When back then, folk would be coming online, buying their first smartphone for the first time, and they would come online and maybe join a group about their favourite music. Football's a big one. They come on and they join whatever football team they support. And that's the context in which that's your jump off point. So how do you get them to become more engaged with other things? Well, let's assume that most people are now got a smartphone or have some sort of access. I don't really want to assume, but let's say for 2021, they still will be in their safety bubble of where they go online, what they check, and it might actually be more like junk food, junk content, as opposed to something that might enrich their life. So I think it's about, again, what we'd always do, and it links to your social media surgeries that John would do, is you sit down with somebody one-to-one, find out where they're at, and then work with them on that, rather than telling them blanket, this is how you work the internet, or this is how you do social media. And I was thinking last night before today, when you're talking about social media expertise, I think that gets confused with people that are experts in content making or experts in marketing to get the most amount of likes. I think John certainly was more of an intrinsic social media expert. So how do you find people on their level in a more nuanced way, or the kind of the subtleties of social media? I'm probably more the distortions of social media, like what is distortion, whereas John would be more subtle. So I'm more cynical these days about social media and how it's impacting society. But I would see where people were at that point, and why they felt they were using the social media that way. But why are they using it to harass politicians?
What do you want to say?
They're not harassing politicians because they're bad people. They want their issue to be heard.
I mean, it's
So if somebody came to you and said, I need to be on Facebook and I need to be on Twitter, would you question that? Would you?
Yes. I said, you don't need to be on it if you've lasted this long.
If you have a life.
Yeah, I was like, I've been on it 13 years, and I realised I got to 35, and all I've done is impress the internet. That doesn't pay your bills. I got to the stage where I was like so fed up of being harassed on it that I was like, is this paying the bills? No, so I don't
A lot
need
of
it.
work for little reward, yes.
Yeah, so but it does do something to your brain. It does poke the ego if it's a positive thing, or more likely it pokes the ego in a negative way, as in like, how dare this person say this about me? But it's if somebody's not on it, I'd ask them what the reason were. I would help a group if they were wanting to reach, like we get it a lot at the paper, people come in and they want to do I've got a call to action, and it's not my job to do the call to action for them, but I will report it. And then you'll ask the questions, and then you realise that all they need is like a group, or they actually just need a couple of paragraphs written. That's all.
Yeah.
They don't need a big fancy website.
It's part of all of this. Is I wish I'd remember where I've seen the technological life cycle. We've got to the point where we've completely seen through all the oversold idealistic nonsense, and we're almost at the point of saying, as you just did, all they need is a group, all they need is an email address, all they need is this, and to do whatever specific thing that anybody needs to or wants to do, we don't need 90% of what's trying to be sold at us.
No,
really
and you don't, and actually you don't.
Not to say that's all bad, and that we shouldn't, that it should all be uninvented or anything. Although probably some of it should, but just accept that it's a huge quagmire of stuff that you're going to pick out one or two little bits and use for what you want to get done.
Yeah, I'd actually say go one further and say you don't need to get like a viral post or whatever. In fact, getting viral posts and engagement and attention is actually more of a pain in the arse than you think it is, because then what happens is you get an entirely new audience looking at you, and it's kind of like a storm for a moment, and you might and that's fine, and then you move on, and then people are like, why aren't you saying that thing that you said before? It's like, because it was one post that happened to be picked up in the algorithm. But the problem is with some organizations, they want that virality all the time. They want people to be, so you then have to start inventing things to like appease the algorithm, and that's I think that's how we end up in Trump type situations. It's outrageous. So I think coming back from that, I would like to see you kind of like trusting and being authentic, not as a selling point, but as a genuinely how to be a citizen online. But I'm asking a lot when it comes to this, because we're riding a wave of populism at the moment, and that is that's like swimming upstream, trying to get a bit of like social democracy back into political discourse. Because if you say anything, people go, that's because you're this. I'm like, am I? That's the issue we have at the moment, I think, and also it's compounded with the fact that we aren't seeing people face to face, and a lot of this would be done in a town hall, or it'd be done in like, you look at feminist movements in the last 30-40 years, like they always met up in real space, meet space, and discuss these complicated ideas, and a lot of things don't translate online, with too many voices. So that's all the things we're going to have to start unpacking as we get allowed out the house again, and seeing people and really embracing that face-to-face time.
So in the digital inclusion space, what organizations or voices are you appreciating at the moment?
That's a good question. If you put me in this spot, I know like the More Collective up in the Highlands, they do a lot of stuff.
More MHOR,
MHOR, I know that. Let me have a think. I have to get back to me on that, actually, because I don't want to start talking and then I don't get the thing.
Yeah, but, we have talked about the More Collective before, and Sweyn, we've talked about trying to get one of the people from the More Collective on. Scotland has done an awful lot of good stuff with Connecting Scotland. We've covered a lot of those kind of stories, and some in Wales and some in England as well. And I think each nation is doing slightly different things, obviously for different size of communities and stuff. And we just want to kind of guide people in the right direction. When Shirley Ayres was on a couple of weeks ago, she was asking about courses to teach people, getting online, and which were exciting, because she found, like you said, a lot of kind of dull things that were just didn't excite people. They weren't, teach me how to click, or move your mouse around. That's not very exciting for people. My mother's 84. She doesn't want a bloody lesson in how to move a mouse. She has an iPad, and she needs something that will be more responsive to her. And Sweyn and I have both ordered Facebook portals, because we want to experiment with the technology and see what might be interesting.
That's what we're telling each other anyway.
The pandemic,
I've ordered a piece of equipment. Nobody ever asked me.
Well, the thing is,
why I've done that.
Well, the pandemic has been the single most driving factor of accelerating something that was coming anyway. If people want to be connected, it's basically like, this is what you're getting, right? And that is fine. But I think moving forward, this is a great opportunity for. I'm a big advocate of face-to-face stuff when it comes to digital inclusion. Before I moved down here, I was doing workshops in Maryhill, and it was a Maryhill Integration Network. So you've got women who live in Glasgow, who've came from countries all around the world, all different languages, doing a little bit of citizen journalism stuff. And I think I could have done with cloning me 4 times, because there was far too many people in the workshop. But because I think because of that, but the tactile face-to-face is a great way of moving people forward. And then you can you do a task that's creative, and then you can ask people and they can ask you, and it's far more fun than going do this, do that. But I think the pandemic has forced people online who would have avoided it, and it's great if you're a journalist in a way, because all the community councils are all online, and technically they really should be online in a rural place, because like you get folk after work having to travel like 2.5 hours in a place like, we're mainland, but still very rural. But I think moving forward we have to kind of go, this is a great thing because it saves the X, but this isn't so great because we miss this. And I think these organisations in Scotland, certainly, I'm sure they'll be all over it, but when it's safe to do so, being able to take that energy and push it forward. And it's not just about getting people online, it's about making sure that time online is quality time online.
You've mentioned an inclusion point there as well. There's going to be all sorts of arguments, I think, about access and inclusion versus face-to-face, or how to hybridize the two approaches.
So I feel like there's been some really good stuff that we can take away from this, but if we make everything, I'm already probably we've touched on this before, but like, people are already fatigued with digital, and I think we're all chomping at a bit, and we can't. It's difficult to say until we're at that stage, because everything's so uncertain. But if you think about all these resilience groups that have came together, that are in touch with the people are most vulnerable and are most isolated, and tapping into the energy of a network like that, and with the community councils going online, with the face-to-face stuff. I know in Whithorn, which is on my patch, it's down in the Mackers, they've got a community fridge. They use Facebook to get out what's in the fridge, and then they'll drop it off at the door. And that you've got your food reuse. They work with the supermarkets. You've got your food poverty, but also it's for everyone. It's not if you can use it because the food needs to be used. And they said that donate as much as you want, because we can put another fridge in. But they're using Facebook to get that out. That is it in practice. It's not a theoretical thing. Folk can use Facebook to get food, and if they can't use Facebook, they can find somebody that can help them. So it's these little things that have allowed community organisations during one of the biggest crises in our lifetime to be able to operate in a way that's safe and feeding people and reducing food waste. That's a great link between the initiative of a community fridge and technology.
That's amazing.
I think the concept, the concept, at least, of so-called digital champions that are a component of certainly the Connecting Scotland and some of the other digital inclusion projects, the concept of that, to me, is a great idea, because it really is, at its best, sitting down one-to-one with somebody and saying, what do you want to do? And here I am to try and help you do it. But you've hit the nail on the head there when you said that when you're trying to do something like that in Maryhill, you need to be cloned 4 times. I think that the resources are sometimes put into the wrong sort of areas. We don't want more online training courses about how to click a mouse.
No.
We want more 50-minute time slots or hour-long time slots of somebody to sit down with 1 or 2 other people and actually just find out what they want to do.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I thought, at least in the beginning, with these big projects that were kind of responding to the pandemic, was that kind of role was very much centered in them. I'm not sure there need to be work done to see how well that's gone, but it seemed to me to be a move on from the big initiatives of the past, which was buy 5 million iPads and distribute them everywhere you possibly can.
And you see, the thing is with that as well, is like the capital spend to then lock them in a community hall. Like I've done workshops in various places where the project had money. So there was like an arts project, had money to buy top-notch MacBook Pros and cameras and everything, and you know, the trainer, the person was, I was a trainer, and then the people that employed me were like, you know, clicking through Apple and buying all this stuff. Fantastic, right? I'm only getting 4 hours a week to do this. So when I leave the project, who's going to do it? And then the kids want to be empowered, but then they have to ask permission, and the staff aren't comfortable enough. So it's actually better for me to train a youth worker to work the kids.
Yeah.
Rather than me doing the training with the young people, actually train the youth worker to be confident to do it, and then they could do it, because then I can let it all go, you know.
Getting that stuff into the skill sets of people who are doing stuff anyway, whether they're youth workers, occupational therapists, teachers, parents, however far out you want to go on that, getting the stuff that known by the groups of people that are already, as it were, have the lights on and are providing a service, is always going to be far better than creating something that people can't get access to.
Yeah, and it'll
my
be
hobby horse.
but you've seen it. They've got like with the teaching at home at the moment, and you know, I read in the Sunday Times yesterday there's 32 local authorities in Scotland, and the paper was complaining about, where the reporter said that there's 32 different approaches. Now, when we did Digital Commonwealth, I was a project coordinator on that, and I could have told you there's 32 different approaches, because you know why that is?
I don't think they're looking hard enough. If they looked into each of the 32 councils, they'd find about 150 different approaches.
Well, you know why there's 32 approaches? It's because you've got a champion, depending on who you work with. So like I did it with to do with the Commonwealth Games, so there was somebody seconded to deal with Commonwealth Games matters, right? So the success or failure of each local authority to engage in our project that was funded by the Legacy Fund was dependent on the legacy lead in the local authority. And some legacy leads were absolutely just loving this stuff, and some of them had other things to do, and that's absolutely fine. But when you're talking about why is there 32 different approaches, it's like, well, actually, if there's somebody that's good at their job or good at that sort of engagement, I'm somebody that's interested in digital pedagogy and digital blended learning, it's going to be fine. But they were talking about a sort of learning lottery, but that's it. I mean, how do you uniform this? Because actually, again, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's like a teacher, a lecturer, a workshop trainer, whatever, will have their own approach to things and ways to engage pupils and students and workers. So, I mean, how do you, I mean, uniforming it isn't the answer. Like, do you want digital presenteeism? Like, you know, I was reading a story about it. Do you want all the young people to sit on their laptops for 45-minute sessions? I mean, some parents might want that, but you know, we all know what it's like to sit in meetings all day on a laptop. It's like it's not always the best.
It's even worse than being back at school.
It does open up a whole idea about what learning is and what face-to-face is and all that. And that's normally the reserves for people that study learning technology. And now we're having a national conversation about what that actually means.
Yeah. I mean, the data is Ofcom reckons between 1.14 million and 1.78 million children in the UK don't have home access to a laptop, desktop or tablet. And more than 880,000 children live in a household with only a mobile internet connection. And obviously, data is expensive and it's an issue. I mean, there is a new offer now that some of the telecoms companies are offering data packages through schools. Schools trust the local authorities, but they are. I mean, in order to take advantage of this, the person has to give the pupil's mobile phone number, the network the phone is on, and the name of the account holder. So they're collecting a lot of data, and with the figures being so high, I would have expected the offer to be high as well, but it's not. It's less than 70,000 people, and some of the providers are providing very, very small response. Like I've done a table of the responses just yesterday, and Tesco, for example, is only taking up to 1,000 requests. I mean, that's going to be exhausted, now.
Is it a PR thing?
That's what I'm thinking.
Questions.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got the Citizen Sim project, which is a great thing because it's looking at the whole picture and it's trying to get people to be put in a position by their providers to donate their extra data to this purpose. Okay. But it just, the question I have about all of that is unless we understand the economics of the whole mobile data sector, we don't know how much of that data is actually spare and how much of it is sold by the companies in the certain knowledge it'll never be used, because there's got to be a percentage that they assume that is not used. So they're going to be nervous of a sudden use of data that they're assuming isn't going to be used, which might put all their network calculations out. There has to be a bit of coordination about this, and I agree with you. The suddenness and the look at thisness of the extra data initiative, it does look kind of strange. And it doesn't look as if it's been particularly well thought through.
I mean, I would be speculating now, but I worked at O2 in a call centre before Twitter, so it'd been 14 years ago. But do you wonder that if they reveal that, then it reveals their business model, selling data plans and that, and buying new devices and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, O2
I'm talking to you now through. Go on.
O2 is one of the ones who haven't put a limit on the amount of requests they'll accept. O2, Smarty, and 3 have no limit on it, but the others all have limits on it. EE is better. They'll accept 60,000 requests, but Tesco at 1,000. I thought that was that's just a farce, really.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I think they
Sky
might.
is 1,800.
Yeah. It's.
But they've had the publicity for that now, and they've been politicians and others have gone, oh, isn't this great?
Yeah, that's
be more critical. We bring a certain amount of skepticism to this, obviously, with our backgrounds, and I think that's healthy. To ask questions of, don't get carried away with devices or technology.
Just in the interest of slight balance, there, it could be that those numbers reflect how many subscribers each network has. It could be.
It might be a percentage, and also I think Tesco jump off another. I think they borrow off another network.
Yes, they use the data of another provider.
I mean, I think all of this again is opening up a conversation about digital poverty. That also creates a challenge when you're talking about like poverty in terms of hunger poverty, because it's poverty,
housing poverty.
It's played off against each other, and who's having a better lockdown. And then when it comes to the young people who are already suffering here, because you've got kids who are not going to get their hires, or they're not going to get their exams again. They're going to get marked on their coursework. There's lots of questions to be asked about education and poverty, and those there's parents that can afford to send their kids to tutors online, one-to-one, ones that can't, don't have the adequate equipment, don't have enough, that sort of stuff. So all of this is then discussed in councils, and it's played off against each other: digital versus food versus
the
housing.
question
Actually,
I'd
it's
like-
all together, you know.
The question I'd like everyone involved in this sort of, particularly when you're talking about education, the question I'd like everyone who's trying to act in this kind of environment is, how does the child who is nowhere quiet to work or warm to work take advantage of this?
Yeah.
And if the answer is a lot of arm waving and, oh, we'll find something later, then you're not doing it properly, really.
No.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we do
if
need
what
to
you're trying to
address
do is-
the Maslow's
what-
hierarchy of need. Yeah,
Exactly.
definitely.
If
Yeah,
what you're
Yeah.
trying to do is provide resources for those who need them most, then you've got to start where those people are, not where you might imagine from your
yeah.
Yeah,
your
and it's
imagination.
that old adage of like, how could somebody be poor because they've got a laptop or iPhone or computer? It's just it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. I mean, we hear stories that kids get chased away from hanging around the town, but where do those kids go? They get flung out their house and they have to hang around it, you know, and trying to find safe spaces. I had a plumber in on Saturday and I had to hang around all day. Where do you hang around when there's nothing open in lockdown? I felt, you know, just putting yourself in the shoes of a young person that has nowhere safe to work.
when
nowhere
all the
calm
places
to
they
work.
might normally go are
Yeah.
either closed or under severe scrutiny.
Youth
Yeah.
centres, etc. And young people are the ones that are going to pay for this in a way because of, you know, their experience, especially the teenagers who are being vilified for being out, can't do right for doing wrong. Schools, you know, having to go online. Where I am, especially, there's only 2 high schools in the region. You know, you don't have much of a choice. You have to go to the schools here. So there's all of that going on. And I don't want to take too away from what we're talking about, but it relates because it's all very well giving somebody an iPad, but it's just a tool. It's like giving somebody a shovel. You know, it's just you need to have the context wrapped around it. You know, but giving an iPad to sell it. I don't know.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
maybe
it's
that's what's needed. We picked up a few stories, Jennifer, just to kind of round off that are, you know, that are kind of more hopeful or sort of optimistic, maybe in a way. Sweyn, if you can, the Xbox one, I think, was the one that we were most kind of that was new
That's the one I've
new
got
news to
on my
us,
screen
and
even. You've been kind
it
to me.
was a story that actually was
This
talked
is
about
only
last
news to us because
October.
we're not gamers. That's why it's news to
Yeah.
us.
And apparently a school child in Wales brought this to kind of more people's attention. And, you know, obviously video games have had a bad press
There
and
he
are
is.
charged with being responsible for children spending hours glued to a screen. But he has kind of reminded people families can use their Xbox or PlayStation to access online learning, and there's a whole instructions list there of what to do to get your Xbox you know, available to use for online learning. I think it's the older models, not the new models. They've disabled those.
I think the
settings in
safest thing
new
to say,
models.
Pauline, is that your model may not work.
Yes.
There's also apparently I've heard since there's issues with you trying to use PC USB keyboards as opposed to those designed for use with games consoles. The short version of this is give it a go, and if it works, you can use it, and if you can't, then you might have to seek advice.
Yeah, and our friend who we had on before, Rachel Connellis, who's on the show before, she also talked about this for regards to Sandwell. So there's a local Midlands connection as well. Sorry, Jen, you were going to say something.
No, I mean, the computer console was a point of contention in the first lockdown with my nephew. I am very much I am his ally here, but he was getting to the point with Fortnite that he was coming in and lying and going just one game more and all that. So, but how can you blame him? I was sitting scrolling through Twitter, TikTok.
Yes.
Right. So, like, you have to, like, when you're just hanging about the house, and you know it's bad for you, and you can feel it. It's a bit like when you eat too much sugar. It's the same. He was the same. I don't think he's enjoying it, but I think this time around he's very much like, I've had enough. Like, he plays it, and there's more rules in place. But I think with gaming as well, like, again, it's a conversation about technology, it's a conversation about literacies, it's a conversation about boundaries and like how much and how it makes you feel and mental health. I think with nothing else going on, it's probably quite good for the escapism for young people. But the fact that this kid has found a way of I mean, I use my PlayStation as an entertainment box. You know, it's I probably use it more now than sitting. I don't really, I can't really switch off in that way. I used to
What I
when I was
liked about the
younger.
idea is it's a brilliant example of somebody meeting people where they really are, where they want to be, where they're comfortable.
Yeah.
So if you can make that tool useful for the kind of home education stuff, if they want to do that, it's worth it.
Exactly.
We're running out of time.
We are.
1
Can we
o'clock,
just say
yeah.
that the Restart Project, which is online, the restartproject.org, is running a list of where to donate your computer to local people, a list of community reuse projects in the UK. So if you have a machine to donate, please contact the reuseproject.org to find your local place to donate it to. Jennifer, if people want to find you online, what's the best place to go?
I'm on Twitter. It's Jennifer M for Mother Jones. Everything else links off that.
Great.
So, yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for coming on. Thanks
No
for
problem.
your stories about
Jen.
John Popham, who we still miss terribly, but we're very glad we have the show, and we look forward to next week.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Thanks,
Thank
Sweyn.
you.
Thank you. We'll
Bye.
switch off our things.